Good morning. We've heard each of the past 4 weeks of this message series, Needy, that God is God and we are not. God is God precisely because he's completely self-sufficient in himself. He doesn't need anything or anyone. He really doesn't, but we do. We have needs that we must attend to just to survive. But God's hope for us is that we can rise above mere survival and begin to thrive. When we deny even a single one of our legitimate needs, we're not moving towards spiritual health, we're moving away from it. That's why during this season of Lent, we've been taking a closer look at just how needy we are, how to best meet those needs, and as a result, how we can be healthier, more joyful, and more fulfilled. The need we're going to talk about this week is a paradox that Jesus talked about quite frequently: dying to live. To help us get started, we're going to look at a passage from today's gospel. We're in the 12th chapter of the Gospel of John. John tells us that just days before he died, Jesus warned his followers what was coming. Jesus says, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." He's referring, of course, to his own death, which he fully anticipated and freely accepted. And here's how he looks at it. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. If the grain remains on the stalk, it will never produce anything. Only after it's plucked from the stalk and planted in the ground can it bear fruit of its own. It's a paradox, a seeming contradiction that is actually true. And this paradox is implicit to the whole of human life. Death is a way of life, and death is the way to life. We see this all the time in our own lives. If we want to be healthier and get in better shape, we have to die to junk food and fast food and overeating and commit to a healthier diet and an exercise program. If we want to get out of debt, we have to die to irresponsible spending habits and start saving. If we want to get better grades in school, we have to die to laziness and procrastination and begin studying, completing assignments, and being engaged in class. Over and over again in our experience, a certain kind of death, a definitive end, is required to bring something much better to life. This principle is written into life, and sooner or later, we all have to come to terms with it. But as with everything, Jesus takes the point even further. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will preserve it for eternal life. Whoever hates his life will preserve it. Jesus often used hyperbole, exaggerations which are not meant to be taken literally. And certainly that is intended here. He doesn't mean hate in the sense of some kind of searing negative reaction. He's not talking about emotion. He's talking about direction. When we hate something, we want to go in the opposite direction. That's what Jesus is talking about here. Jesus is moving away from life in this world to eternal life, just as Jesus is headed to death on the cross in a very deliberate and clear choice. He's pointing us in that direction too. Jesus is reminding that we need to die to ourselves in this life in order to experience eternal life. Lent is intended to help us do that every year. Even the smallest of intentional sacrifices matter. There are some things God is calling us to give up, and they aren't bad. They aren't wrong, but in our heart of hearts, we know it isn't the best use of our time or talent. Do we spend too much time golfing or watching football on TV, or binging Netflix, or surfing the web, engaging in social media, or playing video games? We may be filling our lives with material stuff that might very well be keeping us from a better life. Then there are clearly the negative things in our life that we need to consider. Think of the many things we need to die to: gossiping, complaining, criticizing, judging, engaging in profanity, angry outbursts, wasting time, looking at inappropriate stuff on the internet, drinking too much, eating too much of the wrong things. Our love for this life and the things of this world will ultimately prevent us from seeing things from God's perspective, which is a view towards eternal life. We need to die to that part of us that avoids pain at all costs, that places our comfort above moving forward or growing in ways we know we could and should grow. We all have those negative or destructive things in our lives that we really don't want to change because we become used to them and we aren't comfortable with the idea of truly dying to them. If there are things that are coming to mind that you know you need to die to, and you're beginning to struggle with that fact, congratulations. Congratulations for two reasons. The first step to change is to recognize what God is calling you to die to. You may be on the verge of a breakthrough. Our greatest breakthroughs and moments of life change often come when we're challenged to move out of our comfort zone and are faced with making a decision. The second reason for congratulations is that you're in good company in this challenge to die to self. St. Paul reminds us in the second reading that Jesus prayed to God with loud cries and tears. He struggled in this life just like we do. Jesus says so himself in the gospel today. I'm troubled now, yet what should I say? Father, save me from this hour. But it was for this purpose that I came to this hour. Jesus struggled. Jesus was troubled. And yet he understood that this was his purpose and his plan. In these final days of Lent, we need to ask ourselves, what is God asking of me to let go of? In what way is God calling me to die to self? What can I add to my life to be a better version of who God is calling me to be? What am I wrestling with that I need to surrender and lay at the foot of the cross? When we die to sin and selfishness and our avoidance of pain, really what is dying is a lesser self, a false self, so that the true me, the true you, can come to life. We die to our lesser self so that we can become a better version of who God calls us to be. That's the person you deserve to be, not only for yourself, but also for those around you. Being aware of our needs and taking the time to meet them is not selfish. When we acknowledge our needs, we're on the way to knowing that our deepest needs can only be fulfilled by the one who made us. Consider what we heard today in our first reading from Jeremiah. I will place my law within them and write it upon their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. We will eventually come to understand that our greatest need is to be in communion with the one who made us for himself, the one who has written his law upon our hearts. So as we journey through Lent to Easter, may we all recognize our own neediness and understand that God is the only one who can satisfy our needs.